morning. It's great to see you guys. Those of you who braved the first live class. We're not doing anything topical really today. It's all just kind of background and setup and answering any questions that you might have. I did set up a page on Canvas that has links to like resources. My plan is to do that every day. So if you go there today, it'll have a link to the keynote slides. So you can download those if you want to. There's also a link to the preface from the book if you want to read that. But again, it's all just introductory material. But welcome. Mobile development is going to be, I think, a lot of fun. Let's look at the syllabus. This is mobile app development. You're going to learn how to create mobile apps, and you'll do it, I think, much more easily than you might think or might be concerned about. We have a course textbook, but like I've said a couple times, if you haven't already ordered it, don't order it. Wait until I finish the update, and I will post an announcement on Canvas that says, okay, good to go. Order away. I did want to say, if you already have a copy, if you got a hand-me-down copy, or however you have a copy, that's fine as well. The new edition won't have anything earth-shattering that would make an older copy or hand-me-down copy in some way useless. If you haven't gotten it, then I would say go ahead and wait a bit. And some people wait even to see. It could be that you find these these Zoom classes and the keynote material that I post so completely clear that you don't really need a textbook, and that's okay too. The course app. So there is a course app to download. In the syllabus, it looks like I've got 3 screenshots of it. To download it, you will need this semester's access code. Actually, this time I worked it into the keynote slides, so it'll be when I switch back to the presentation, we'll get to one of the slides that'll have the top secret code. You would need it after downloading the course app, and you try to decompress it. It will ask you for the semester's access code, and then the very first time you launch it, it will likewise ask you for this semester's access code. If you filled out that student information survey, there is an ungraded survey on Canvas that gives me your basic information. The last question says, do you want to have your grades posted in the course app? So the grades in the course app will look something like this screenshot. I'm able to do a lot more in my app than I can do in Canvas in terms of helping you see where your grades fall and projecting out, how you'll do in the course and maybe what you would need to do to do as well as you want to do. So anyway, the only way to get to this grades panel is through your own individual password. And so if you want to be able to do that, then the last question on that survey on Canvas is, what would you like your secret code to be? If you're unsure and you don't want to do it, don't do it. If you want to do it later, you can do it later. Most people give me a password and then they forget it. And then, and I'm serious when I say that's a lot of people. At least probably a third of the students will forget their password at some point over the semester. And I always remind you at this point, you can't write it down. It's not supposed to be secret from yourself. I should say you cannot log in to the grades portion yet. I have not set that up. But after today's class, I will run through all of the surveys you guys filled out, and I will enter in your top secret codes. And at that point, say by class or by Zoom time on Monday, that'll be set up so that you could log in. Now, it will look a lot like what it looks like in the screenshot, in that these will be 0. And occasionally I have somebody panic and say, I logged in and everything's a 0, and what's going on? And of course, it will be a 0 because we haven't done anything yet. When you log on early, it will just be, for the most part, zeros, except for one thing, which I'll talk about in just a second. All right, the semester plan. So I have laid out kind of the chapters that I think we'll go through. This is actually a pretty ambitious plan, and what I've learned teaching online is that I can't move through as much material as I think I could. So this is kind of a, I don't know, a wish list of things I might hope to get to, but I don't think we will. And in Java in the fall, I did have to make several changes just due to the pace that we were able to maintain. And so I'm already looking at our plan this semester and thinking, I'm not sure that we'll get to that fourth lab day and homework check day, and I don't know how deeply we'll get into some of the chapters. I ended up skipping a chapter in Java that we just didn't have time for. So although this is a plan, I would anticipate lots of changes. So that's why I've stamped over this draft, watch for changes in the course app. And I also won't be updating this PDF of the syllabus. So for the most part, there's no point coming back to this table that we're looking at now as a for sure reference of due dates and stuff. Rather, I'll put up whatever we're doing in Canvas. I'll link to the stuff we'll be using in Canvas, and the course app should be updated as well to provide a list of everything that's going on and any additional notes. In terms of grades, there are grades, of course. We can't seem to escape that. And likewise, in the fall, I did have to make some changes. Obviously, if I drop something, then those points will be reallocated, to other places. Right now, the initial plan would be to have 2 take-home exams. I call them exam 1 and exam 2. And then a final exam, which is like a multiple choice true-false kind of exam. We will do something to check on your work on the homework. We will probably also do lab day challenges, which will be either an individual or a team project of some sort that are generally kind of a little bit more challenging than simply homework and may ask you to try to integrate to get you to think more carefully about what you've learned across multiple chapters. There will be some sort of a development project, and again, depending on the feedback you guys give me on the surveys, it'll either be an individual project or a team project or a pairs programming project of some sort. Depending on what we do, there will probably be a project status review, which will just be a short memo that says this is what we're working on and this is the progress we've made. And then the project, the development project, whatever form it takes, at the end will have you'll create a video, showing us what you succeeded at, what you got working, and how awesome it is. Class participation score. So normally, in a face-to-face class, this is based on a variety of things, but attendance is one of the things that always factors into class participation for most professors. And obviously with an online class, I can't really take attendance per se because this isn't a synchronous course. You guys have been able to log on this Monday morning at 10 a.m. because your schedules have allowed that, and that's awesome. But I can't very well penalize people who can't do that. That wouldn't be fair or make sense. So what I'm planning on doing this semester is a couple things. I will make note of anybody who does show up for the live classes. And probably if you do show up and participate in any way, I'll make note of that and give you guys a bonus of some sort, which I haven't gotten to yet. I lost my train of thought there. The class participation. So I do these little quizzes. After we cover any sort of material in a Zoom class like this, there will be a really brief, typically 3-question quiz. And you might have already noticed that in Canvas. It becomes available right after class, so typically 11 or 11:15 a.m. And then you have until the beginning of the next Zoom class to finish it. So for instance, on this Thursday class, you'd have until Monday at 10 a.m. or 9:59 a.m. to complete it. They're supposed to be pretty simple questions, and they're open book and open notes. So I'm hoping most people will get all 3 of the points on each of the quizzes throughout the semester. But what if you can't make the live class? So if you can't make the live class, I'll be editing the video together and posting it and giving you guys a link so you can watch the video at some point before the next class. Or you also have access to the keynote slides for each topic, and I pull the questions pretty much out of the keynote slides, so you can also have those keynote slides handy. And I'm saying that or emphasizing that just because I have had people who just skip them, forget about them, don't do them. Or I've had people who just kind of dive into them and haven't watched the video, didn't attend the class, don't have the keynotes open, and just kind of guess. And so sometimes, sure, you could probably guess and get 2 or 3 of the points, but sometimes you can't. So anyway, those points will be on the table for you to take, and your cumulative total of those points will act sort of as a proxy for your class participation. So that'll be one of the things that factors into this class participation part of the grading scheme. And then peer evaluation, we will end up doing something in teams, the importance of which and the extent of which I'm still thinking through, and I'm waiting to hear back from you guys on the survey questions I asked you. But there will be some form of peer evaluation. All of these should total together to 100 points. But again, the specific points allocated to each thing may be adjusted as I make changes to the team project and the homework checks and the lab days. So again, that actually will all be in the course app. The course app in that grades panel will tell you everything that's due, the date that it's due, and the number of points that are currently allocated to it. Again, there's no real reason to come back and look at this in particular because this will probably change within the next couple of weeks. So office hours, it's an online course. I'll make myself available to you guys via email and via Zoom, and if you want via Skype or whatever you want. All you have to do is contact me and say, hey, I want to talk to you about X or Y, and can we set up a time? And also team, I meet with teams. If we get into teams, your team wants to meet with you, same exact thing. You say, we want to do a team meeting. Let's set up a time on Zoom, and I'll set up a time on Zoom. So I want you to know you have complete access to me, not necessarily that I can Zoom 24 hours a day, but I'll make myself available almost every day to have some time to meet with students and answer questions and whatever you need. Okay. All right, Coinage. So if you didn't know, I do kind of put themes on my classes. So if you took Java with me, the theme was pirates, and we had a pirate currency that you could earn coins in, and I called the pirate currency doubloons because that sounded very piratey at the time. And so in this class, I wanted to pick something different. So I started out with Harry Potter, and then realized that's a trademark term, and I probably shouldn't use that. So I call it Wizarding School, but it is sort of a Harry Potter theme. And I decided for some odd reason to make the coinage system different, so I called it galleons. If you didn't know that, that is actually, I had to look it up, but that's the Harry Potter currency is a galleon. So what tends to happen now is when I mean to say galleon, I will say doubloons, and when I mean to say doubloons, I'll say galleons. Feel free to correct me at any point, but when I say doubloons or galleons or coins, I mean the same thing. So for instance, these quizzes can earn you 3 galleons each time, and you'll be able to check your galleon balance in the course app. There are other ways to earn coins. Just really briefly, I would say pointing out errors, typos in the chapter. If you ever get your hands on the book, typos in the chapter, typos in the keynote slides, links that don't work, mistakes or inconsistencies on dates, essentially anything I'm responsible for. If you find an error and point it out, you can earn a galleon. And in a normal face-to-face year, non-COVID year, we would do stuff outside of class as well, career development dinner, stuff like that. So we'll just see how the semester goes. I know that there is a career development dinner coming up February 9th, I think, and it will be set up so that you can sign in, and I'll get a list of who went. So definitely for that, there'll be a galleon reward. And I'll try to think of other things that we can do or that you could do virtually that might be beneficial to you that I would be willing to award, coins for. I think that's it for the syllabus. We should be back to the keynote slides. Is that what you guys see? Fantastic. Just really briefly, this is essentially the material that's in the preface chapter of the book. I've given you a PDF version of the preface chapter on Canvas, so you have that. But I've pulled out everything that's important in the keynote slides, which is what I try to do with all the keynote slides. So obviously, it's a popular topic. It's been popular for years. Mobile apps are certainly one of the huge trends in development. Everybody wants to have a mobile app. Whether it makes sense or not, everybody seems to want to have their own mobile app. It's also when it shows up on lists about how well people like their jobs, it often shows up as a really popular category. The focus on the course is getting you to that point where you're really confident that you could actually whip up a mobile app of some of some sophistication. I think most people end up at the end being really surprised by how much they're able to do, and it's not all easy, and I don't want to make it sound like everything's just a piece of cake and a walk in the park, but it is completely doable. I know some of you already have experience with development. Obviously, some of you took the Java class with me last semester. Others have taken, the C# class or the Python class, or if you're extremely unlucky, maybe you took the Visual Basic class. So I know that some of you are coming in with some previous desktop app development experience, and I would just say, obviously, mobile apps are a little bit different. If you haven't given it a ton of thought, obviously the screens are a lot smaller. You do not have the same sort of, vast expanse of a huge Retina display to lay out your interface, and you've really got to think through more carefully, where do I put stuff, how big does it really need to be, and so on and so forth. Obviously, mobile devices are touch sensitive, whereas most desktops are not. Users have expectations about mobile apps that they'll be, rich and interactive, may contain animations and sound effects. Even if it's not a game, people have that expectation that the mobile apps will be, in some ways, maybe nicer. The other thing is, mobile apps obviously can use battery. It's not something we typically think about in desktop apps. We used to, in the old days, we used to think about how much RAM you were using, and we don't think about that anymore just because we have so much RAM and it's gotten so cheap. And we never think about battery, or most people don't really think about battery drain for desktop apps. So we need to be sensitive to what we do on mobile apps with respect to stuff like optimizing our listeners and loops and stuff like that to not drain CPU and therefore battery unnecessarily. The third and last of the mobile app differences are, well, we have access to all this extra hardware, right? We have access to the cameras. We can take pictures, motion, tilt, acceleration, haptics, GPS, location data, stuff that we don't have access to on most desktop apps. We now all of a sudden will be able to get access to. So that'll be cool. I know some people, don't know necessarily what to expect. If this is your first language, I know you may be a little bit anxious about what the course will entail and whether or not you can do it and what is it going to be like. And so trying to explain what developing software is like, I say it's kind of akin to explaining to your cat how to play Minecraft. You'll annoy the cat, and the cat might end up being better at it than you. Probably the best analogy is it's like learning a foreign language, but the foreigner that you're learning to speak to is super literal. They even pay attention to how you spell and how you capitalize. And sometimes they act really dense and then surprisingly brilliant, and then occasionally seem to hate you. So kind of like the French is what I always joke. Also, just what language? It's another thing some people ask me on the first day is, well, how did you pick this language? I assumed we were going to be learning Java, development for mobile apps, or I assumed we'd be learning Swift or something along those lines. So, and there are so many options, dozens and dozens and dozens of options for what you could learn to program in to develop mobile apps. So I had some key criteria that I wanted to have in the language. I wanted it to be cross-platform. I wanted whatever you learned to develop in, I wanted you to be able to put the result into the Apple App Store, but also the Android Store, the Play Store. To me, if you're going to put a lot of work into developing a mobile app that you were going to publish to a store, you might as well put it in both stores and learn a development kit that would allow you to do that. I wanted you to be able to work on Macs and PCs. I didn't want to pick, for instance, if I picked Swift or Objective-C and used Xcode, that would be Mac only. And I obviously didn't want to create an elective that was either Mac only or Windows only. I wanted also a language that supported all of these rich interactive kind of features that I wanted you guys to have experience coding, because that tends to be more fun than simple text-based or bare bones kind of apps. I wanted it to be free or low cost, and I wanted it to have tools and reference materials. There, there, at the time I made this decision, there was only one language that met all of those criteria. And interestingly, I mean, everything's changed in some ways, but it's still a great choice. So the development kit, the language I picked is now called Solar 2D. And you might not have heard of it because they just changed their name. It has been called Corona or Corona SDK, and they decided that, well, Corona was kind of a loaded word, or has become kind of a loaded word, and they were afraid people were associating the mobile apps developed, in Corona as somehow relating to the virus, or I don't really know. I mean, but people think if you get the vaccine, it has a microchip in it. So I don't know whether they were right or wrong to be so cautious, but they did rename it Solar 2D. It's clearly, once you start getting the web pages and stuff, you'll see that it's right in the middle of this transition. So it will be called Corona SDK as well on lots of websites or web pages. A lot of the documentation will still refer to it as the Corona SDK. Even when you download, even though the link says you're going to be downloading Solar 2D, when you get there, what you'll see is you're downloading something still called Corona. And when you launch, for instance, the simulator, the device simulator, it's the Solar 2D simulator. That's how Solar 2D wants to refer to it. But when it launches, it shows up in your, on your computer as the Corona simulator. This is also another opportunity for me to get everything backwards. So just like I'll say doubloons sometimes, I'm sure I will say Corona instead of Solar 2D. So just bear with me, and also don't let it confuse you. And so this is where also, if you did get an older copy of the book, a used copy, whatever, this is one of the differences, is it's going to say Corona SDK everywhere. I don't think that'll be terribly confusing to anybody. If you have an older copy of the book, I think that's fine. So the thing about games, Corona / Solar 2D or Solar 2D / Corona does have a built-in physics engine, and a lot of people use it to create games. I mean, obviously games are popular, and that makes sense that they would do that. Doesn't mean that you have to make games. And I'm just a little bit sensitive about people thinking that this is a game development class instead of an introductory programming class, that happens to also enable you to create apps which could include games or game-like features, which I think is the better way to think about it. Not that there's anything wrong with games. I would just say that the development kit here will help us create apps that are really good looking, that have easy ways to create animations and play sounds and do stuff that's richer and more interactive. That'll make any app better. And then you could also create games in it as well. The book and the IDE. So again, the book, unless you already have it, wait to order it. I hope to get it finalized and published this weekend, at which point I'll put an announcement on Canvas with an updated link. In terms of IDEs, you do have a choice in IDEs. I picked Corona originally because it had this really cool IDE that had this fantastic website. It made it look like, the nicest IDE, one of the nicest IDEs I'd ever seen. When we got it, we realized, well, it didn't work. A lot of stuff that's on the website, the app just didn't do. You'd try to load the debugger and nothing loaded. And so I stuck with it for a couple years thinking they're going to improve it. This is on the horizon. Obviously, if they've created a video that shows this stuff working, they must at least have a development version of it that's working. They never came out with one that worked. So I finally just gave up on it. And what I ended up doing is creating something of my own. So I call it Drawn2Code. It is optionally available for you if you want to use it. You absolutely do not have to use it. There are other IDE options. Drawn2Code lets you select stuff in a GUI and drop it into your programming design and work with it without having to get into the nitty-gritty details of writing the code, for instance, that would create a button on screen. Instead, you just add a button to your design, and Drawn2Code writes all the code for you. So I'll give you a quick demo of it in a couple of minutes. It is a a Java desktop app. I mean, that's probably pretty obvious considering that what I teach is Java desktop app development. So that's what I would pick, and that makes it cross-platform. So it doesn't matter if you guys have a Mac or a PC. It should work either way. We already talked about the theme, so you're up on the theme. We talked about Coinage. It is galleons. You'll be able to keep track of your coins in the course app, but not yet. I'll have to get the access code that you gave me, your personal password that you gave me, and set up the course app with those passwords to get it to work. So again, by Monday, you should be able to log in and see that scores page. It'll be all zeros, except if you do the quiz and get galleons on it, you'll have up to 3 galleons. Usually on the first day, there's a little bit of trepidation, especially on the part of people who are just learning or looking at this semester as a way to kind of dip your toe in the water of development in some cases. I frequently have non-business majors take the course who don't have any background at all, and so there's just a little bit of worry that they're not going to do well, that the course will be structured in such a way that it'll be these kind of hardcore coders. They're going to come in here and just kind of steamroll the class and take all the A's, and that you won't have a chance. And so I want to just make really clear that that's not the case at all. Most students do really well in the course. That includes students who don't have any significant programming background. I know that because I asked you guys about your programming background on that initial survey. If you haven't filled it out, that's one of the questions. And I look at the end of the semester to see how people did by category. And for the last couple of years when I started doing that, what I found was, and the only semesters that there have been a difference in the final grades and the final performance has been to the favor of the inexperienced students. That is, the inexperienced students who started out as inexperienced ended the course with better grades than the experienced students. So if that offers you any comfort at all, I hope it does. It absolutely means that you can do great in the course. I don't know entirely how to explain the difference. The course is certainly geared to beginning introductory programming concepts. We'll go through everything in detail with lots of examples, and maybe the super experienced students tune out some of that or just expect that they'll understand it without having to read it and put in any real effort. I don't know. That's conjecture. But I hope that offers you some relief if you have any anxiety at all. I don't think it's warranted. I think you'll do awesome. And tips. My goal is not to rush through anything ever, and I will be asking you throughout the semester, how's the pace going? Are you keeping up with the chapters? Are you keeping up with the homework? And do I need to speed up or do I need to slow down? That said, to the fullest extent that you possibly can, I would recommend keeping up with the reading, keeping up with the videos or the live classes, keeping up with the homework. The reason is topics like this build. So if you don't understand, for instance, what we cover in chapter 5, when we get to chapter 6, you're going to struggle because some of what's in there rests on the assumption that you've made sense of chapter 5. So if you start to get behind, it has this tendency to snowball because then you don't really understand chapter 6, even though maybe you were there and read it. And then what does that say for chapter 7? And so on. So to the extent possible, don't get behind. And that's part of the reason the course is designed like this, with these either 1 or 2 live Zooms each week, which will be edited into videos, and these quizzes that they do give you, 4 days or whatever to take, but 3 or 4 days to take. But my hope is that forces you to try to keep up. That's the biggest tip. If people run into trouble in the class, it's not because they can't understand stuff. It's because they just tuned it out for a couple weeks and then tried to tune back in, and it's tough. It's tough to do that. I think all professors look back on courses they took and which ones, ended up being important and that you remembered and that you learned, way more than you think. And I try to design my courses based on those great experiences. There are other courses that you've probably experienced where you really could tune the course out. You didn't really need to keep up with the reading. You could dive into almost any chapter and read it, and it pretty much made sense. This is not that kind of course. Like I just said, the material builds. And so as your experience and knowledge grows, you'll be able to understand later chapters easily if you keep up with it. So this is the kind of course I hope you've experienced where you do work hard, but you really like doing it. You enjoy the homework. Once you start writing apps and hitting that run button and they run, it's a lot of fun. It really is. It's very rewarding. So I hope it's the kind of course where you do work hard, but you love it. You learn way more than you expected or thought you would. And you find, for instance, following along in class when we do like a step-by-step thing fun. You find knocking out the homework problems fun. You find the learning fun. So my goal is that this is that kind of course, and we'll start in earnest in chapter 1. I promised I'd show you a little bit of Drawn2Code, so I wanted to show you. All right, so this is just an empty design, and you can see on the left there are all of these palettes of things that you can add to your app, categorized by, right now, display objects, widgets, actions, physics, functions, and snippets. So if you wanted to create an app with a button maybe that said something, you'd head to widgets. You'd pick the type of button that you want. You'd customize it in any way that you want it. We'll go over doing all of this. You can use the sliders. You can grab it and move it around. And importantly, though, what's happened when you did that is the IDE has added what I call script objects to the script stack. And when you created a button, you actually added 4 script objects that each individually have their own settings panel that you can do stuff with. And as a result of whatever shows up in the stack here, the source code is generated automatically. So here's the sort. You don't need the, get rid of that, just so you just see the source code that's generated. So when you did that, all the source code was written for you. All the little bits that you would otherwise have to type out, I try to take care of for you. And then I also plug into, for instance, inside the button handler, I'll provide sometimes code that will tell you kind of what you can do in response to that, for instance, the button being pressed or the slider being slid or whatever the case may be. We'll start out the semester drawing stuff. And so again, you'll have complete control over what shows up on screen. You can set the colors, you can set appearance, you can add text. The default color, you might wonder why it's white. The default color in mobile apps, for the most part, is white because the screens are black. Most development kits start out with the default color of white. So almost everything you add by default will be white, which is back, to some extent, as a desktop developer, if you're coming with that experience, the default color is typically black. So it's just the opposite. But again, you have full control over what everything looks like. I was going to go for something Corona-like, but not burnt orange, but sun-like or solar-ish. And so you can just keep working away at your app and adding, every time you press a button over here, it adds a script object. Each script object has its own settings panel. Obviously unique to whatever that is. For text, you can work on the text color and the font settings and stuff. Anyway, my hope is that this will make stuff so easy for you that it'll take away some of the stress and anxiety related to making those stupid little typos. I don't know how much programming you've done, but all languages are super sensitive about obviously spelling and capitalization, and it's so easy to use the wrong spelling or to use a parentheses where you're supposed to use a brace or a bracket, or maybe you don't match up, brackets, or you forget a comma somewhere. There's so many little errors that you can make, and it just has always been, it frustrates me, and I know it frustrated my students, that they couldn't even get a UI to load because there were typos in how they set up the button, and it wouldn't load, and then you could spend an hour looking for the typo. And I hope to short circuit all of that with this tool. All right. That's it for the material today. So watch for updates on Canvas when the book's ready to be ordered. But I'll get you updates to what we're going to cover Monday. Look for that quiz that should show up on Canvas for you. You have until Monday at 9:59 a.m. to take it, so there's no huge rush. Thank you again for joining the live Zoom. I really do appreciate it. And being on video, at least for some of the time. Other than that, I think if there are no questions, what I'll do is I'll hang around if you guys want to drop off if you don't have any questions. If you hang around and you do have questions for me, I'll hang around, which I normally do most days, until everybody's off.